Hello, dear students or dear student. Um, I almost want to start with Привет, друзья, because I've been listening to so much Russian lately. I hope you are getting your dose of English listening and movies and so on. And so on means and so on, or etc. Yeah, so I almost want to say hello in Russian, but then I remember I have to do it in English. Um, all right, so good evening to everyone who's just joined. Good evening to everyone. Yeah, after good evening, we also have to good evening to everyone who has just joined. Labas vakaras visiems, kas ką tik prisijungėte. Good evening to everyone who has just joined. How are you guys tonight? How are you doing? Tonight, I'll want you to speak. Tonight, I'll want you to be speaking. And we'll start off with our last lessons material. We'll start off, or I can say we'll start off, it's basically the same. Yeah? We'll start off, or we'll get started with learning, with remembering the material of our previous lesson. And last time we learned if sentences. And this was the first time ever. This was the first time ever. Last lesson was the first time ever when I gave you homework. I said, hey, for next lesson, do this. And I don't know if you guys have had the time for it, but have you looked at the tables? Have you looked at the tables of if sentences, or have you listened to the recording, or have you seen any if sentences after the previous lesson? If so, type yes in the comments. I really don't know how much homework people do these days, so I just last time I said that it would be good to actually look at some more of these if sentences, but today is what we will do more of. Okay, so I want to make my speaking quick today. Hi there, Victoria. How are you tonight? I want to make my speaking quick today, so I will just remind you the types of if sentences. Do you guys remember how many types of if sentences there are? There are 4. Yeah, and tonight what we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to remind you of the if sentences, or you're going to remember them with me. The next thing we'll do is for about 30 minutes, we're going to be saying very many if sentences. And after that, we're going to learn one of our last structures, viena iš mūsų paskutinių struktūrų, of this training, šių mokymų, yeah, of this course, šio kurso. The structure will be how to say padaryk, kad kažkas padarytų tą, or it's basically that simple. Iš esmės tokia paprasta. The structure will be basically that simple. So number 1, let's remember a bit about if sentences. Number 2, let's say very many of them, as many as we can, kiek daug kiek galim, as many as we can. Pasakykim tiek if sakinių, kiek mes galim per 30 minučių. Let's say as many if sentences as we can in the next 30 minutes. I see Inge saying, sorry, but no. I thought, what do you mean by that? Because I asked, how are you doing? How are you? And you said, maybe I thought I said, are you doing good? Are you guys doing good tonight? And you said, sorry, but no. I thought, Inge must be very sad. That made me actually a bit sad. But I am happy to hear that you just didn't look at the if sentences. That's cool. You can use this bad emotion of not doing the homework and do it after this lesson. You can do it for the next lesson, or for before getting onto if sentences on Anki. Yeah? So before you go work with if sentences on Anki, prieš einant dirbti su if sakiniais Anki programėlę. Yeah, before going to the app, look at the table, pažiūrėkite lentelę, or even while you are working on if sentences. O galbūt net ir kol dirbat su if sakiniais on Anki, you can have the table open, galite turėti lentelę darytą just as extra help. Tiesiog kaip papildoma pagalba, as an extra explanation. Okay, cool, guys. So this is what I wanted to say. Thank you for the comments here. Now, what we're gonna do now is, I want to remind you real quick is an informal way of saying very quickly, remind you about how if sentences work. So how many types, how many different kinds or types of if sentences are there? How many? There are actually 4 types of if sentences. If sentences are also called if sentences, if sakiniai yra taip pat vadinami, if sentences are also called conditional sentences, sąlyginiai sakiniai. And because we want to say jeigu būna taip, tai bus taip, jeigu bus taip, tai bus taip, jeigu būtų taip, ir jeigu būtų buvę taip, tai būtų buvę taip. Okay, so these are the 4 types. These are the 4 types. The type number 1 is the zero conditional. Conditional, sąlyga, conditional, sąlyginis. So the first type is the zero conditional, which is kas būtų, jeigu, sorry, not kas būtų, jeigu būtų, it's kas būna, jeigu būna. Jeigu būna taip, tai būna taip. Tarsi, jeigu nutinka taip, tai nutinka taip. Kaip iš esmės priežastis ar pasekmė, kalbant apie kažkokius apskritai dėsnius ar dėsningumus, kas būna. Yes? And the zero conditional is the most simple. It doesn't have any rules. Ir šis nulinis sąlyginis yra paprasčiausias, neturi jokių taisyklių. The zero conditional is the most simple one, and it doesn't have any rules. Okay? A rule is taisyklė. To rule can also mean valdyti, to rule a country, for example, is valdyti šalį, to rule a country, but a rule can also mean taisyklė. So there are some rules with these if sentences, right? And there are no rules for the zero conditional. We have said before some examples. So we have said, jeigu aš turiu laiko, aš skaitau, which was, if I have time, I read, right? Or jeigu mes sutinkam, mes gerai praleidžiam laiką. If we meet, we have a good time. Or jei jie ateina, mes būnam laimingi. If they come, we are happy. Okay, so this is the zero conditional. It's very simple, right? Jeigu būna taip, tai būna taip, no rules, jokių taisyklių, no rules here. The zero conditional, super simple. Now the first conditional yra susijęs su kokiu laiku. The first conditional has to do with, turi pasidaryti su, yra susijęs su. Has to do with, arba paprasčiau, is related to. Galbūt paprasčiau. It has to do with, reiškia, yra susijęs su, it is related to, yra susietas su, irgi reiškia, yra susijęs su. So this first conditional, when do we use it? Kada mes vartojam pirmąjį sąlyginį? We use the first conditional actually in what tense, kokiam laike? In the past, in the present, or in the future? We actually use the first conditional in the future. The first conditional in Lithuanian would be jeigu bus taip, tai bus taip. So, jeigu aš turėsiu laiko, aš padarysiu kažką, jeigu mes susitiksim, this is the first conditional. Okay, the first conditional is in the future, and in Lithuanian, both parts of the sentence are in the future. Lietuviškai abi sakinio dalis yra ateityje. Both parts of the first conditional is in the future in Lithuanian, right? Which makes sense, which is logical, because in Lithuanian we say, jeigu saulė švies, žmonės bus laimingi. But in English, even though nors ir, and this is how I connect my speech, and this is how we connect our speech. Taip mes sujungiam kalbą, ne? Even though, nors ir. Even though, tas though turi tokią keistą rašybą, taug. Ir even rašo even, netgi arba net ir bus even, o netgi jei, even if, arba jei norim sakyti nors ir, tai even though. Tai nors ir even though, even though it makes sense in Lithuanian, jeigu bus taip, tai bus taip, but in Lithuanian it's normal, yeah? We don't have these if sentences in Lithuanian. In English, we have them. And the first conditional is in the future in Lithuanian. In English, the first conditional is also in the future, but not all of the sentence. Nors ir, even though, žmonės bus laimingi in English is, jeigu žinom kokie žmonės, the people will be happy. The people will be happy is žmonės bus laimingi, right? But how do we say saulė švies? Žinom, kur saulė, of course. The sun will shine. There's one sun here, right? So that sun, the sun will shine. Žmonės bus laimingi. The people will be happy. Normal. But if the word if comes in here, then it changes the part of the sentence it is next to. Jeigu ateina dalis if, jis pakeičia tą sakinio dalį, šalia kurios jis yra. If comes here, it changes the part of the sentence it is next to. How does it change the sentence in the first conditional? Kaip jis pakeičia sakinį pirmajam sąlyginime? The part with if goes from the future into the present. Iš ateities į dabartį nueina ta dalis su if. So then, jeigu aš turiu is if I have, but jeigu aš turėsiu is also if I have. Make sense? Does that make sense? Jeigu aš turiu if I have, but jeigu aš turėsiu is also if I have. Yra taip pat if I have, right? So jeigu aš turėsiu laiko, aš padarysiu tai, if I have time, I will do it. Jeigu jie žinos, jie pasakys mums, jeigu jie žinos, atrodo ateitis, ar ne, bet angliškai tai yra su if, and it seems like it's the future, right? But in English, when we have the word if, how do we say jeigu aš žinosiu? If I know, yeah? Jeigu jie žinos, jie pasakys mums, if they know, they will tell us. Jeigu struminam tą they'll, tai tada jeigu jie žinos, jie pasakys mums. If they know, they'll tell us, right? So it only changes that part of the sentence that is next to if. Tai pakeičia tik tą sakinio dalį, kuri yra šalia if. We could change this and say, jie pasakys mums, jeigu jie žinos. So the first part would be normal. Jie pasakys mums, no if here, jie pasakys mums, they will tell us, jeigu jie žinos. In Lithuanian, jeigu jie žinos, in English, jeigu jie žino. So jeigu jie pasakys mums, jeigu jie žinos. They will tell us, jie pasakys mums, they will tell us, jeigu jie žinos, if they know, right? They will tell us if they know. So this is the first conditional. Let's do two more. Jeigu ji gyvens čia, mes susitiksim dažnai. If she lives here, we will meet often. If she lives here, we'll meet often. Arba jeigu ji paskambins mums, mes padarysime viską, ką galim, kad padėtume. Jeigu ji paskambins mums, dabar jinai paskambins mums yra she will call us. Bet kaip sakytumėt, jeigu ji paskambins mums? Iš ateities einame dabar. Ir kaip tada sakysim, jeigu ji paskambins mums? Jeigu ji paskambins mums yra, jeigu ji skambina mums. If she calls us. Tiesa, nes dabar tik kaip jinai skambina. Nesakom she call, sakom she calls, right? She calls, he calls, it calls. Tai jeigu ji paskambins mums, if she calls us, mes susitiksim. We'll meet. Ir mes padarysim viską, ką mes galim, kad padėtume jai. And we will do viską, ką mes galim, everything we can, arba everything that we can, tam, kad padėtume jai. To help her, arba in order to help her. Tam, kad galima sakyti arba tiesiog to, arba labiau pabrėžiant, in order to. Okay, so jeigu jinai turės laiko, if she has time, nors ir turės, bet vis tiek sakom, jeigu ji turi laiko dėl if, iš ateities į dabartį. Jeigu ji turės laiko. If she has time, ir viskas, jau pasakėm su if, dabar jau sakom paprastai, nes jau pasakėm su jie, ką norėjom pasakyti. Jau tada dedam kablelio, jau po kablelio paprastai. Okay? If she has time, jeigu ji turės laiko, if she has time, ji aplankys mus, she will visit us, ir mes padarysim viską, ką galim, and we'll do everything we can tam, kad padėtume jai, in order to help her, arba tiesiog to help her. Cool. So this was if sentence number 1. If sentence number 2, yeah. Number 0, of course, is if I have time, I read books. No, it's in the present. Jeigu būna taip, tai būna taip. If this happens, then this happens. No rules with the 0 conditional. The first conditional is in the future. For example, jeigu aš turėsiu laiko, aš skaitysiu. If I have time, I will read. Okay. Now the second conditional is used tariamoje nuosakoje, which is when we normally use the word would. Aš eičiau, aš pirkčiau, aš daryčiau, aš sakyčiau is I would go, I would do, I would buy, I would say, right? We use the word would here. But if we have if, something happens. Actually, 2 things happen. I have aš vairuoju, which is I drive. Then aš vairuočiau is I would drive. But if I want to say jeigu aš vairuočiau, 2 things happen. Do you guys remember what the 2 things are? So aš vairuočiau, I would drive, but how do you say jeigu aš vairuočiau? We take off the would, we remove the would, and we go into the second form. We dive into the second form, we dive into the past. So whenever we have this tariamoji nuosaka, whenever we have this aš daryčiau, aš eičiau, aš pirkčiau, aš sakyčiau, aš norėčiau, etc., ir taip toliau, and so on, ir taip toliau. Whenever we have this, what we do is 2 things. What are the 2 things? The 2 things are we take off the would and we go into the second form. Also, I have to remind you guys something. When we started the training, when we started the training, because we started 1 week later, because we started 1 week later, in the first lessons I mentioned, in the first lessons I mentioned, and this is important, that the final week, during the final week of the training, we will have the lessons on Monday and on Wednesday. Tad kitą savaitę mokymai vyks pirmadienį ir trečiadienį. So next week, the lessons will take place on Monday and on Wednesday, vietoje antradienio ir ketvirtadienio, instead of Tuesday and Thursday. So I have said this, and I said this in the first lessons. So I just want to repeat it to you guys. I hope you can come. I hope you can come. And yeah, if not, you have the recordings too. So next week, we will have our lessons on Monday and on Wednesday. Okay, cool. Having said that, reiškia pasakius tai, angliškai turint pasakytą tai, having said that, let's remember the final if sentences. Okay, so the second conditional, antrasis elginis, the second conditional is kas būtų, jeigu būtų taip, tai būtų taip. Įprastai sakom, kas būtų su žodeliu would, I would go, I would drive, I would buy, I would say, I would come, I would leave, etc. Yeah, ir taip toliau, etc. Etc. means ir taip toliau, etc. Etc. Yeah. Now, jeigu norim pasakyti, jeigu aš daryčiau, jeigu aš būčiau, jeigu aš pirkčiau, jeigu aš sakyčiau, tai prie to žodelio if esantis, tas daryčiau, eičiau, sakyčiau, nutinka jam kiek dalykų? 2. Dingsta would ir prisideda ir nerimi praeitį. Dingsta would ir nerimi praeitį, dingsta would ir nerimi antrą formą. Tad aš pirkčiau yra I would buy, bet jeigu aš pirkčiau, if I bought. Taip pat kaip tarsi sakytume, jeigu aš pirkau. Jeigu aš pirkčiau, angliškai bus jeigu aš pirkau, tad jeigu aš pirkčiau bus if I bought. Jeigu aš žinočiau, if I knew. Jeigu aš daryčiau, if I did. Vienintelis nuansas yra, kad su žodeliu be nerimi kokią antrą formą, ar was ar were. Į were. Į žodelį were nerimi žodžio be. Tad jeigu aš būčiau is if I were. And in English, tavo vietoj is jeigu aš būčiau tu. Which is if I were you. Yeah, so we don't really say in English, I were, yes, we say I was, he was, she was, it was, you were, we were, and they were. But when we have when we have conditionals, we do it differently, right? And then how do you say, for example, the pasamdyti, as we said last time, is to hire. Aš pasamdyčiau is I would hire, but then jeigu aš pasamdyčiau is if I hired. If I hired. Okay. So jeigu aš pasamdyčiau tave, visi būtų patenkinti. Patenkinti yra satisfied. Satisfy yra patenkinti, to satisfy. Ką primena satisfy? Sat, sėdėjo, is, yra, fainai, atsisėdo ir yra fainai ir jis patenkintas. Už tai patenkintas, satisfied, yeah? Satisfied. Patenkinti, to satisfy. Už tai patenkintas būtų satisfied. Dabar pasamdyti to hire. Aš samdyčiau yra I would hire. Bet jeigu aš samdyčiau, if I hired. If I hired is jeigu aš pasamdyčiau, and jeigu aš pasamdyčiau tave, if I hired you, hired taisyklingai, tiesiog prisidės de, if I hired you, visi būtų patenkinti. Everybody would be satisfied. Dabar jau antra sakinio dalis bus normali, ar ne? Tik ta, kur yra prie if, dingsta would ir nerimi antrą formą, nerimi praeitį. Jeigu aš pasamdyčiau tave, if I hired you, visi būtų patenkinti. Everybody would be satisfied. Su mano sprendimu. Sprendimas yra decision. Spręsti decide, sprendimas decision. Kaip ir pasirinkti choose, pasirinkimas choice. Taip ir spręsti decide, sprendimas decision. Tai visi būtų patenkinti su mano sprendimu. Everybody would be happy with my decision. Jeigu aš pasamdyčiau tave. If I hired you. Jeigu jis žinotų tavo situaciją, jis suprastų. Visų pirma, jis žinotų yra he would know, but jeigu jis žinotų is, taip pat kaip jeigu jis žinojo, mūsų sutrumpinimas, kad nereikia taip sudėtingai galvoti, nors padar sudėtingai, kad išmastyti tą, jis žinotų he would know, ar ne, o jeigu jis žinotų, dingsta would ir nerimi antrą formą. Ir tada suprantam pačią esmę darybos ir už tai jeigu jis žinotų, dingsta would, nerimi antrą formą, jeigu jis žinotų, bus if he knew. Bet paprašiau galima tiesiog mąstyti, kad jeigu jis žinotų, yra taip pat kaip jeigu jis žinojo, taip sakyti, ar ne? Ir if he knew būtų jeigu jis žinotų. Jeigu jis žinotų tavo situaciją, jis suprastų tave. If he knew your situation, arba jeigu jis žinotų apie tavo situaciją, jis suprastų tave. If he knew about your situation, dabar jau antra dalis paprasta, jis suprastų tave. He would understand you. Yes? He understands, jis supranta. O jeigu jis suprastų, kas būtų, jeigu būtų he would understand. Jeigu jis žinotų apie tavo situaciją, jis suprastų tave. If he knew about your situation, he would understand you. Okay? Tai nuspręsti, decide, sprendimas decision. Decide, decision, yeah. to make a decision, būtų priimti sprendimą, angliškai padaryti, pagaminti sprendimą, to make a decision. Rinktis to choose, pasirinkimas choice. Ir irgi pasirinkti gali būti to choose arba to make a choice. Padaryti pasirinkimą to make a choice. Okay, now the final third conditional actually comes from the second one. Paskutinysis trečiasis sąlyginis, tiesą sakant, ateina iš antro. The final third conditional actually comes from the second one. Ateina iš antro, yra kilęs iš antro, comes from the second one. Because the second one is, aš turėčiau, jeigu aplinkybės būtų tokios, aš iš tikrųjų turėčiau eiti padaryti,